Game development tutorials are really important, and I'm glad to have contributed to the space. When I first tried Godot in 2017, there were almost no tutorials and you were pretty much just left with the documentation. It's sort of like attending a single French class, being given a dictionary at the end, and being told bonne chance. This led to Godot having a reputation of either being very difficult to learn or not having enough resources to teach people how to use the engine. This used to be true, and while it still held on to this reputation for longer than it should have, in 2023 that criticism is mostly gone, with the only real sore points being few 3D tutorial series. The work that the Godot community has put in is a very large part of the engine's increased popularity, and I can only see this improving in the years to come. But what is the purpose of these tutorials as a whole? I'd summarize it as it is to teach people how to solve problems. The problem can be very specific, but it can also be very broad. Specific as in, how do I get a ladder to work in a 3D game? Broad as in, I've never used a game engine before, how do I use this thing to make my dream game? How you decide to teach is really up to you, and no matter how much effort you put into your tutorial, there are going to be plenty of other people with strong opinions on how a subject could be taught better. I don't believe in the one-size-fits-all mentality, and the reality is that a hyper-edited down tutorial may not be as effective as a 10-minute step-by-step slog. I try to make my tutorials in a way that my past self would have appreciated before I knew how to solve the problem. With specific tutorials, I prefer them to be fairly quick and snappy. I'm of the mindset that if you are trying to find a solution to a specific problem, you're already somewhat well versed with the engine, so getting down to the point is a win. But with broader tutorials, I'm there to learn the engine or to maybe experience a different way of solving problems. For this, I do prefer the slow slog method, and I do like having a playable game at the end of the tutorial. As a whole though, these tutorials take time to make, and while I love making games, I only like making tutorials. The Vampire Survivors clone took me 2.5 months to complete. Part of that was making the game, the fun bit, and then remaking it again after Godot 4 Beta 1 came out. After that, the lesson planning, recording, and video editing felt like a marathon, and I'm still a bit burnt out from doing another large tutorial series. With that said, if I make something that you would like in your game and there aren't any tutorials on it already, then I'll consider making a video on it. I'm not going to be one of those YouTubers who misrepresent suggestions as demands, especially since I like it when people leave comments on what they would like to see. I'm actually making this video sort of as a response to Corey Palazzari's comment, which you can read on screen, and I wanted to share my mindset before doing a response. And the reason for that is because I find myself a bit conflicted on how I feel about his suggestion. The too long didn't read is that it would be cool to have a tutorial for a life sim with a bunch of systems being used as lessons. On one hand, I think that a tutorial series for a life sim would be really cool and a lot of people would benefit from it. There is just an appeal to having an all-in-one series that teaches people the basics of how to make a game genre. I know that I would have personally loved a tutorial series on a more complex genre, less so as a beginner, but more so as someone who has started to get comfortable with the engine. On the other hand, I do feel like most of the features suggested are already kind of done within specific tutorials, and a big problem people do face is leaving tutorial hell. I mean, if you've never made a save system before, you want a tutorial on how to make one. But I do have to ask how much knowledge someone is going to get from having applied that tutorial to their project versus making it as part of a series. I think that a large part of the reason why platformers are so common for beginner tutorial series is because they are easy to make. Not only is this good for the person making the tutorial because it's less effort and lower barrier to entry, but it is also more accessible for those watching. A large part of why I chose Vampire Survivors was because I knew that the scope was reasonable and that I could leave the person watching with an actual playable game that they were likely to understand. And so I go back to my view on what a game dev tutorial should be. A piece of media to help people solve a problem. If I was to make a life sim tutorial, I would have to ask who my audience is going to be. I feel like beginners would be intimidated, and I feel like those with intermediate skills are going to want a solution to their specific problem. but it would probably be great for people around the novice skill level as a way to bridge the gap between basic games and more advanced games. Alternatively, this could just continually push people down the path of tutorial hell rather than getting the mindset of a problem solver. I am not 100% sure what the answer is, and I'm asking for feedback on this. I'm not in any rush to make a new tutorial series, but I am keen on making a large step-by-step series in the 3D space of some genre eventually, and I'm thinking that this could be a good opportunity to make a slightly more advanced tutorial series over the standard beginner-friendly series. Keep in mind that Godot 3D is still a bit starved for beginner tutorials. Is a slightly more advanced series something you think would be beneficial to the Godot landscape? Do people need a series to help them think about more advanced systems, or can we expect people to learn through specific tutorials? Would a 3D beginner-friendly tutorial be more useful to the community at large? If you could leave a comment with your thoughts and opinions down below, then please do. I'm not planning to start the new series anytime soon, so if you are watching this in August 2023, your comment may still be used to change the direction of the next big series. And if you're not a subscriber, then check out my Vampire Survivors clone tutorial series if you wanted to learn Godot 4.